Hello everyone, welcome to our 12th episode of the Roofless Dog and Pony Show. My name is Julio, I am the dream alchemist at Roofless Painters, and I am going to be the host of this presentation. As you can tell, I'm in a different place today. We are very excited to have been invited to broadcast the episode from The Lodge, a gallery on Western, that's hosting a very special exhibition titled Agent of Ordinary Pleasures. So that's where we are, and we want to talk a little bit about the space, the show, before we talk about the inspiration for our next painting webinar. Agent of Ordinary Pleasures, it's an art show organized, curated, and produced, and arranged, and all these wonderful things by VC Projects in partnership with Maiden LA. Today's the opening show. So we're also very excited to be here. It's going to be up for 1 week at the Lodge, and it's by appointment only. There's an opening on Saturday from 3 to 7, and the space follows very strict COVID etiquette, only 2 people at a time, and you have to wear masks. And Victoria Chapman has been incredible in featuring not only the artist, but also connecting people and helping the artist create a specific work that has to do with intimacy, pleasure, and how the artists see that state of mind, visually and emotionally. The whole idea of the art show came about because of the confinement and isolation that artists had to endure in order to adapt and find ways to create, find new subjects for their artwork. So Victoria did a series of interviews. And the idea came about to produce and create a show that was specifically focused on what intimacy and pleasure would mean for the artist. So I am really excited because I am part of the show. I have 3 drawings, and it was a very good experience for me to be able to produce something or create something specifically for such a show, for this show. And in my drawings, I talk about, or I'm inspired by desire, and I also talk about, in my art statement, I talk about the idea of pleasure and pain, and how this is as much as the visual experience as it is as an emotional experience. The work is incredible. There's photography, there's painting, there are drawings, everything's monochromatic. You can see the show, partial of the show installed in the background. There's also film, and there's going to be music and performance during the week. Victoria has programmed, or has a program that incorporates different kinds of events. The work is exquisite, and it follows specific directives in the sense that it's, as I said, monochromatic, so it creates a mood. Size matters in this case. Everything is small, which invites to this idea of holding and collecting, archiving, which is very much about intimacy and privacy. That's a good word also for the concept of the show. I have been watching the interviews that Victoria has hosted, and I have learned so much about their work, but also this has been really beautiful for me to understand or view how other artists have gone through this period of isolation and have seen things in a domestic environment take center stage. So yeah, for example, I learned about photography, the history of photography. I learned about how some of the artists featured in the show, they wanted to create something that was not based on repetition or reproduction. So the photographic work, it's very unique. It uses different processes, it uses different formats and also different surfaces. I'm excited to see work on metal, work on newsprint. So we highly recommend you come and see the show if you can. Victoria's website allows you to make an appointment, so you can come in when no one's here, learn about the artists, see the work. It's a group show, and the artists, it's a very international group. There are artists from Iran, there are artists from Italy, there are artists from Australia. So this is a show you must watch, not just because my artwork is in it, but because it really depicts what's going on in artists' lives during this time of isolation. So good job, Victoria. Thanks for creating something so beautiful, and also thanks for including my work in it. We'll be talking more about the work, and during next week, maybe we'll do another episode just featuring some of the pieces. But what I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to jump to the formal episode of the Roofless Dog and Pony Show after this introduction. And we're going to talk about the inspiration for the next painting webinar. For those of you who are watching for the first time, the Roofless Dog and Pony Show, it's a live, unedited presentation featuring the conceptual and stylistic inspiration behind our painting webinars. So what we do is we talk about the theme of the next collection of paintings, how it came about, what are the historical references, and why we're gonna paint something inspired by it. So you can find all the episodes on our Instagram, and also we upload them on our YouTube channel, so you can watch all of them. This is number 12. If you have any questions, if you're curious about something, if you hear something that you know of that you want to contribute to the presentation, you can just send us a question or a reference or a link or a movie or something that you feel can elevate our presentation. So I'm going to share some slides, and here is the cover of our next webinar. We titled it Impression Fire Sun. It's going to be our 36 painting series of 2020, which means that we have been painting 36 things or subjects, and it's our 26th series since we started our period of isolation. It's been 26 weeks. I don't know, I feel like it's on one end we feel like it's good to count, but I think at this point I don't know if it makes any sense to count the weeks, because it seems like this is going to be the new live. Anyhow, Impression Fire Sun. Why did we title it like this, and what is this about? So last week we talked about Berthe Morisot, the Impressionist painter, the female Impressionist painter no one knows about, despite the fact that she was one of the most important figures at the time and considered the most impressionist of the Impressionists. So one of the things we learned is that she used a specific kind of blue for the painting that we were talking about. You can watch the episode in our YouTube channel. She used cerulean blue at a time when it wasn't that popular. So we created a beautiful series of portraits of us replicating the same posture and position as the central figure in her painting Summer Day. And that led to talking about blues. So during the follow-up session, we did a study of blues. We got a few more blues in our palette, and we created tints, and we use cobalt blue, we use phthalo, we use Prussian blue, and then cerulean and ultramarine. We talked about it, and we learned a lot of things. And so, but one of the things that we concluded is that one of our favorite, if not our favorite, blue in the palette is the Prussian blue. It's a very, it's an old sort of like pigment. It's the first chemically created pigment. And blues are not very easy to create, blue colors. So they used to be created with a lapis semi-precious stone, but then it was really hard to find anything that had the permanence and the brilliance of blue. So other than the lapis, it was very hard. So by accident, a French chemist, in pursuing the creation of a new red, he instead created the Prussian blue. So one thing led to the next, and on our end, we decided to investigate which works of art, famous works of art, are painted with Prussian blue. And we found out that there are quite a lot, and in fact, Prussian blue has been the favorite blue of the majority of the artists in the 19th and early 20th century. Picasso, for example, his blue period, everything was Prussian blue. Gainsborough, the famous blue boy, which we have in the Huntington Gardens, is painted with Prussian blue. I think his name is Hokusai, the Japanese artist who has a very famous painting of ocean waves, also used Prussian blue. So, and finally, Monet. He used Prussian blue a lot in his palette at the very beginning, but also towards the end. The water lilies have a lot of the wonderful Prussian blue pigment and paint. So one of the most famous paintings at the time that contains Prussian blue is this one, Impression Sunrise. So it's considered the most iconic painting in that period, and it has a combination of cool grays, aqua greens, and bluish tones, and the blue cast comes from the Prussian blue pigment. So yeah, let me just put this information to talk about this, because this painting is in Paris. It was painted in the 1870s, and it was shown for the first time in a group show, another group show of a different kind, that was created because a bunch of artists were sick and tired of having their work rejected by the formal salons at the time, and they grouped together and they created the very first exhibition of their own art. They just didn't want to wait for the salon to understand what they were doing. So the work was shown in not a ground floor, but there was a photo studio which still exists in Paris. I think it was the 4th or the 5th floor, and it's now famous for the space is famous for hosting this very first show. So this was not the most important piece in the show, but it was the most criticized. So yeah, it's a quintessential symbol of the Impressionist movement, and the artist tried to transcribe the feelings of a scene rather than just render the literal elements of the scene. His technique, or this technique, was harshly criticized. Famously, there was an art critic at the time who used the title of this piece, Impression Sunrise, and then labeled everyone in the piece Impressionist. So the Exposition of the Revolutionaries, that was the title, or that was the name of the show of this group of people that ditched the salon and then created their own thing. And the painting is in Paris right now in the Monet Museum. I have seen this painting live, and it's incredible. It's not very big, but it's incredible in its impression of a space. So yeah, so I'll talk about this painting, and the reason why we titled our webinar Impression Fire Sun, it's because in the past 3 days, as you know, and the whole world knows, we have thousands of fires happening. Some of them are really close to the urban area of LA, close to North Pasadena, Sierra Madre. So because of all the fires, every morning when we wake up, there's either no sun, or there's this orange glow that it looks really beautiful, but it's also very scary. So I've never seen this before like this. Today was another day, and on social media you probably have seen a lot of photographs that people have snapped of the sun during sunrise, that it's either orange or red. Some of the photos are also sunset, but mostly sunrise. So perhaps it would be a good idea to show you some of the photographs that we're going to do. So during the webinar, or for the webinar, what we're going to do, it's going to be a landscape assignment, and we're going to work off of photographs. We have compiled a collection of photographs of people, random people that post on social media, snapping this fire sun, the sun through the smoke plumes, the sun through this gazy atmosphere. It's not white, it's red and it's orange. There's another one right here. I'm not going to credit, oh, I'm sorry that the sun is hiding behind the image. I'm not going to credit the authors of the photographs. I don't know, it's social media, so everything's up for grabs, right? So that's what we're doing, and that's there's another one. So this will be some of the inspirational images that we have collected. So anyone who joins will have a library of images with this fire sun, hence the title of our webinar, Impression Fire Sun. And you can see the similarities between this painting, which was done by Monet at the harbor of Le Havre, who knows? I haven't practiced that pronunciation. But it has a very specific conceptual background that I want to talk about. Yes, it's a harbor, but the reason why there is fog, it's not just because of the haze in the morning, it's also because of the smoke from the factories and also from the ships in the harbor. So Monet had a very specific intention to capture the atmosphere, and that's what we're going to go for. The atmosphere of a space, not the elements of the space. So the atmosphere of the space that had a special meaning for him, because France at the time, I think it was 1871, I forgot the dates, but it was around that time that there was a war between France and Prussia. We have learned that Prussia wasn't part of Russia. Turns out that Prussia was a kingdom in Germany all the way to 1917. And the kingdom of Prussia went to war with France. The war lasted 1 year, but France lost. And not only they lost the war, but they lost part of the territory that is bordering today's Germany. So the mood in the country was not very happy, and what Monet intended to do is to create a painting that featured the rebuilding of the country, the reconstruction, the industrialization of France at the time, in order to sort of like mark a period out of the destruction of the war. So this is not just a pretty painting. It's a painting that Monet did because he wanted to celebrate that the rebuilding of the country after the Franco-Prussian War. So yes, there is fog, but the fog, it's mixed with the smog of the harbor, and it has a celebratory connotation in this sense. In our case, it's not going to be the same, obviously, because there's nothing to celebrate about the gaze, the hazy atmosphere that we have experienced in the last 3 days. So I'm going to jump forward really hard, and I'm just going to show you this tweet by our governor, the governor of California. He tweeted this a couple of days ago, the 8th, 2 days ago. So last year in 2019, there were 5,000 fires in California in the fire season that burned through 118,000 acres. So this year there are, I cannot see, 7,000 fires, 2.3 million acres burned. I feel like we were more freaked out last year. There was more anxiety. Last year that I feel like there is this year. We think that this is business as usual. For some reason, I feel like maybe it's because we are in this isolating mode, and the news are overwhelmingly political. But I don't think there's the same amount of panic as there was last year, certainly. And it turns out we're on track of having double the amount of fires than last year, double. And I don't know how many times the amount of acres burned, from 118 to 2.3 million. And we are not done with fire season yet. So this sky, it's not just something that randomly happened. I'm just going to bring another image that was tweeted by Barack Obama. This is San Francisco. It was either yesterday or 2 days ago, and this is not a filtered image. It feels like it's coming out of like sci-fi movie, but this was San Francisco sky a couple of days ago. So anyhow, one of the peculiar, I'm going to go back to Monet's painting. By the way, Monet, when he was young, he was a total babe, and he had a lot of success in his romantic life. He was very poor, and he didn't achieve financial independence or success until he was much older. But I love this portrait of Monet done by a different artist when he was young. So I just wanted to feature his portrait, and I'm just going to go back to this famous painting, and I'll show you something that's really interesting because color was something that was important for the Impressionists always. And in this painting, one of the things that it's important or beautiful, it's the fact that the boundaries between objects are not obvious. The colors are not necessarily compartmentalized, except probably for the sun. So one of the art critics, not at the time but later, described this color location as the paint becomes the place. So I love this description of using color in a more open way. We constantly talk about this all the time in our webinars, how sometimes things may feel too compartmentalized when we color rather than painting. So this painting is the perfect example of the opposite of that. The painting becomes the place means that the paint, the function of the paint is not to color shapes. The function of the paint is just to create an illusion or an impression. Luminance was also a very important aspect in during this movement, and I feel like it reverberated in successive movements. Luminance is different than color in the sense that it is the light that is important or is considered a focus. So I found out, we learned that there's this professor of neurobiology, her name is Margaret Livingstone from Harvard University, that she discovered that if you make a black and white copy of Impression Sunrise, the sun disappears from the painting almost completely. So get ready, because I'm going to put a slide with a black and white image of the painting, and you will see, just remember where the sun is right now. The sun will disappear. Before I do that, I'm going to explain the mechanism, because I think it's very important, and while you make sure you point or you look at the sun. So she said that this effect caused the painting to have a very realistic quality. As the older part of the visual cortex in the brain, shared with the majority of other mammals, registers only luminance and not color. So one part of our brain that we have, a very old part of the brain, has the capability of registering luminance and not color. And that's the reason why we have a different visual experience when we see certain things, and that's something that the Impressionists, they didn't know at the time, but luminance became an important part of their process, and it turns out it created their almost abstract paintings becoming highly realistic. It's not because they were talented in creating realism, it's because they played with the luminance of the paint, the value of the paint. This part of the brain registers only luminance and not color, so that the sun in the painting would be invisible to it, while it is just the newer part of the visual cortex, only found in humans and other primates, which perceives color. So 1, 2, and 3. I'm just going to flip back and forth, but if you can see the black and white right now, you can barely see the sun, and I'm just going to put the color, and now there's this bright orange. So back to black and white, the sun disappears, and then color, the sun, it's a color accent. I think it's brilliant and fun and super playful, and which means that the color has the same value as the background, but the same value as the background, but with a different temperature. But that is just absolutely fascinating. All right, well, this is all. So I'm just going to go back to the cover again. Impression Fire Sun, it's the title of the webinar. We're going to compile a collection of photographs of people taking or documenting this very scary atmosphere. Sun, 2 days ago, it wasn't really cloudy, but just that nobody knew where the sun really was. And today, same thing, the sun later came out, but it's not a full sun. It feels like there's an eclipse. So we'll get inspired, and then we're gonna get inspired by this specific painting. And what we'll do with the photographs, we will create a context of grays and blues. If you have Prussian blue, please squeeze it on your palette. If you don't, and if you have time to go to the art store, if you are venturing out with your mask on, we highly recommend you buy this color because you'll be very happy with it. So we'll create a non-contained study of grays and blues on the background, and then we'll use orange and red for the sun. It'll be a contemporary version of this iconic image, but with a different conceptual intention, documenting this absolutely horrific air, sun, light, fires. California is burning. It's not even gradual. It's not even like in the span of 5 years. This has been the worst so far fire season ever in the history of the state. So it's really scary. We hope you enjoyed this presentation. Sign up online. There's a link on the calendar. It's only $20. You don't have to have any experience. Don't worry if you have the materials. Some people just like to watch. Some people use digital platforms to create. Every experience is welcome, and we are thrilled. If you have any comments, please add them to the post. We want to hear what you think about anything we have said. If you have any references, any experiences that will help us learn more about any of the topics explained, it would be fantastic. All right, so see you, some of you, tomorrow.